have any questions or have anything which you want to go through specifically, be absolutely fantastic to hear some of those.
Cool. So that kind of takes us to our next slide. So we obviously have quite a small group on the session today. So I don't know who wants to start, but we're quite good if we could just go around the virtual room. You could just let us know your name, yeah, what kind of business you work for or what your role is, and what you really want to get out of this session.
Okay, do you mind if I start? Hi guys, I'm Cole. I reside in Pretoria. I've been in digital for a bit more than 10 years now. I used to work for a media company based in Joburg, Zenith Optimedia, part of the Publicist Group. I was basically a project manager there, a bit of traffic management, and dealt with website development, animations on the front end usually. Briefed project developers and things like that, implemented quality assurance testing, did some SEO things, dabbled in a bit of Google Ads and paid media stuff. But then just before the pandemic started, say 2 years ago or so, I moved to Pretoria for specifically a marketing company based here in Pretoria that specialized in paid advertising. Was with them for about 2 years, then the whole Corona thing hit and they had to retrench like 50% of their staff. So I knew my head was on the chopping block there. So I opted and thought, hey, maybe this is the kick in the butt I needed to start up my own little business. So I went on my own and yeah, just started doing Google advertising for clients as well as web development, design, SEO, full little packages for everyone. And yeah, that was in September last year. And so far it's going really great despite the circumstances, but moving forward and positive. There's still a lot of people who are interested in keeping their digital presence alive and online out there, especially during these times. So yeah, I like to help out the smaller clients who don't usually have the bigger budgets that big agencies require. And yeah, so I'm just here to see what's new in the world of the retail side of things in terms of integrating Google Ads and a paid media approach with retail specifically, and maybe just learn a bit more about how the shopping aspect compares with, I don't know, the new types of display remarketing or something like that, or just relying on other sort of initiatives, alternatives to shopping perhaps, should a client not have the required minimum budgets to meet a shopping campaign requirement, for example. What are some alternatives that one can present to clients and things like that? So yeah, that's pretty much why I'm here. See what you guys have to say. Thanks, man.
Cool. Thanks, Cole. That was nice, like a lot of good detail. So yeah, definitely a lot of what you're talking about we're gonna touch on in this presentation. So that's good. I mean, some of the stuff that you've spoken about is out of scope, but as we go through it, I mean, feel free to ask questions if there's anything in this presentation that you don't feel is covered and you had like some burning questions that you needed to get through. So yeah, we can talk through that as well. Ooh.
Thanks.
Okay. Who wants to go next?
Felicia, you're up.
Felicia, if you are talking, you're on mute. Okay, radio silence. Anyone else who wants to go next?
Hello, good morning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Aziz from Nigeria. So I started internet marketing about 15 years ago, but I had some break due to some other professional courses I have to attend. But these days I found the reason to come back, and I've started. I want to start a digital marketing agency. I've took a lot of course and I've started my platform, but I need to widen my knowledge. That's why I've been following this trend. And thanks to my friend Abodorin that actually invited me to this series. I don't have much to say. I've been learning. I also want to learn more to start my digital marketing agency here in Nigeria, Lagos.
Cool. Good. Thanks so much for that. Okay, and then is it one other person? Is it Rashid? Rashid, do you want to go next? We've got a couple of other people who are joining on now. Guys, for the new people who've just joined on, we're just kind of going through the virtual room, just introducing ourselves and just talking about what you currently do, and also what your main learning objectives are for the session that we're going to cover. So is there anyone else who wants to go next, or is everyone going to be very shy?
Hello.
Hi.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, my name is Rashid Shetu. I'm a graphic designer. At the moment, I provide design service for corporate bodies, individuals, and the likes. And I'm beginning to shift my interest in digital marketing. And firstly, I like to learn new method, new techniques in the digital marketing space, and that's why I've been following this trend too. So I really want to learn and learn and learn and learn, and maybe in the future I'll have something to do in the digital marketing space. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, so just here to soak it all in. That's all good. Cool. And then I see we've got Derek and Judith on the call as well. Do either of you want to just give us a little bit of an intro? No? Yeah, we're going to move along. Okay.
Oh, Laurie, you've just gone on mute.
Oh, thank you.
That's a proper lockdown meeting.
Thanks for that. So what we're going to be covering in this presentation is just talking about what search ads are, so a bit of an intro, and then what we're going to also be speaking about is talking about using search ads versus shopping ads. When do we use either of these? What do these entail? How do we get started with search ads? Paid search for retail as an example, just a very simple example that we're going to run through. And then other key efficiencies that you can do in paid search, Google Ads specifically, that could really help you get more bang for your buck. And then we'll go into question time. But as Josh mentioned earlier, as we're going through the presentation, if there's anything that is unclear or anything that you want to discuss any further, please feel free just to stop us and to ask questions where you need to. Okay, so let's just go on to a bit of an intro on search. So what does search mean to you? So let's just look at a search engine results page. So I think we're all quite familiar with this. When you go onto Google and you are searching for something, you would type something, a search query in the search bar. And then what usually would come up would be your search ads, which are your paid listings, and they'll be followed by your free or organic listings. And you can see that these are ads because they have a little ad thing next to them there. And these are businesses who have basically paid, as soon as you click on their link, they would have paid to have their business or their paid listing showing at the top of the page. And then right underneath here, when we talk about organic listings, these are people or websites who have not paid to be there. These are free listings. They have just got websites that meet the criteria, whatever has been searched for here, they meet the criteria there. Right, then just moving on to a shopping ad and a search ad example. So we can see here someone has typed in NutriBullet as their search query, and what they're seeing here is actually some shopping ads. So you can see ads, browse NutriBullet, and we have some shopping ads up here, and then the search ads that are below. So in our example here, we had just the search ads on top and then the organic listings. Here we've got our shopping ads on top, and then we have our paid listings, and then right underneath that we have our organic listings. Right, so now it's just a very, very short little 2-minute snip on what are search ads.
Lara, I think we might have to follow up with the video because I don't think the sound's working. But we can
Right,
we'll
let's
send the
see.
links over. We'll send the links over afterwards, I think.
Okay,
Unless
no
you-
worries.
I'm sure
Sorry
Wiz
if it's a
doesn't know
bit.
how to sort it out.
Oh, it's always the case, isn't it? When you think your video and you've tested out and works perfectly, and then you try your presentation and it doesn't. All right, cool. So let's move along swiftly. So let's just have a look, dive deeper into the difference between a search ad and a shopping ad. Also, just talk very briefly about when to use either of them. Okay, so they are pretty similar in certain ways. As we saw from the previous slide, shopping ads would normally appear above your paid search ad, but you're paying for both. So you're paying for your paid search ad and you're also paying for your shopping listing at the top there. Search ads allows you to advertise products and services, whereas the limitation with shopping ads is that you would need a physical product. You wouldn't be able to do a shopping ad listing if, for example, you were offering a yoga course or a finance course. That wouldn't be available. If, however, you were selling shoes or you were selling NutriBullets like we saw earlier, that would be something that you'd be able to advertise through shopping ads because it is an actual physical product. Paid search ads are text-based, as we saw earlier, and shopping ads, which is really great about them, is that they use these beautiful images, which obviously really draw your eye up. And then with search ads, generally you would bid on a keyword to show your ad, which we'll go into briefly later. And you would have seen in the video if the video had worked. But that's one way to use search ads, is to bid on particular keywords, where shopping ads are a little bit different. You would use a product feed that would contain product titles and descriptions, and then you would bid on those product listings. So what to keep in mind when using search ads and shopping ads? Which one should I use? So as mentioned previously, if you are selling products or services, or you could pretty much use a paid search ad for anything that you're selling. Obviously within reason, there are certain things that Google doesn't allow you to advertise for, but in general, whether it be a product or service, you can advertise it. Shopping ads, it needs to be a product, so that's the limitation. With paid search ads, your ads can appear above the organic listings. And then with shopping ads, which is so beautiful, as we saw before, they place you right at the top of the search engine results page. So you're right even on top of your paid search ads. Paid search ads, you can only show one search ad per advertiser. Whereas with shopping ads, what's quite nice is that you can list more than one product. So just using a South African retailer like Takealot as an example, Takealot, if you're looking for Play-Doh, for example, you want to buy Play-Doh for your child, they would list quite a few different Play-Doh products that they offer within the shopping ads that they've paid for. Okay, so sometimes you don't need to choose. If you are selling a product, like using that NutriBullet example that I used earlier, you can actually choose to have a shopping feed and a shopping ads and to use a paid search ad. So just showing an example here, using Takealot, which I spoke about previously. They've got a shopping ad up here, but then they've also made sure that they've followed up with a paid search ad, which is quite nice because if you have the budget and you have the means, you're then able to really, really dominate the landscape because you're able to show in two places. So that's quite cool about that. Right, now we'll just talk about how do you go about doing a shopping ad, or how do you go about doing a paid search ad? What are the tools that you need to do that? Okay, so obviously very important is to have a website, because when people click through on one of your ads, they need to go through somewhere. And if you don't have a website, they're not able to click through and to see your products or to follow up with whatever you want them to do, whether it's to buy your product or to sign up for a service, you're going to need a website. Because you're doing a paid listing, you would need some sort of marketing budget. It doesn't have to be astronomical. So by no stretch of the imagination do you have to have a huge budget in order to do paid search. Obviously, having a bigger budget helps, but it's not impossible to do it on a smaller budget. And we'll touch on that a little bit later. But really, it's just about being super efficient with how you use your money and your budget. And if you're able to be super efficient about it, you can really stretch your marketing budget. The other tools that you would need is, especially super important, would be a Google Ads account. This is what's needed to do shopping ads as well as paid search ads. You would need a Google Ads account. If you are looking at doing shopping ads, then you would need a Google Merchant Center account. Both are free to set up. They don't cost you anything to set up. What you would need to do is have both, and then you would link them together for shopping ads. And that's how they would work together. And then obviously, if you are choosing to use shopping ads, you would need to have some sort of creatives or images. Again, going back to that NutriBullet example I showed earlier, there has to be an image, and that image would be something that you would use with your shopping feed that you would have linked to your Google Merchant Center accounts. So we're not going to touch too much on shopping feeds in this presentation, just because Google Merchant Center and shopping feeds and shopping ads are almost a whole category on their own, and how you would optimize them and take care of them is a whole presentation's worth. So we are going to concentrate quite heavily in this presentation on having a Google Ads account and how you can actually make the most of having a Google Ads account and using it for retail. Even if you don't have a Google Merchant Center account or you don't have a shopping feed, you can still use Google Ads. Right. So
I think, sorry, Laura, just one really quick thing to add there. I think on the feed section, there are some really good and really helpful tools and also templates on the Google Help Center, which are really useful to get started. They give you a view on the types of things which you need, all of the kind of headers that you need, and effectively spit out a template in an Excel format, which allow you to almost go step by step and fill out the different products which you want to advertise. So that is a really good starting point in terms of starting to build out your own feed. As Laura said, the thing from a shopping point of view is the feed is the area where you are able to start to show multiple products on the same landing page, on the same search, but also it's the area where you can start to improve and really start to see savings in terms of your investment into the platform. Really, there isn't a limit or a starting point in terms of how much you want to spend. It's more how much time can you put into optimizing the feed to get the most out of shopping.
Cool. Are there any questions so far?
Nope, sounds good. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks for that, Cole. Alrighty, so let's just move on to retail and how we can really achieve marketing efficiency. Talking about having a budget and trying to stretch our budget to the full capacity. So just talking about what marketing efficiency is, it's basically, how do I use paid search to get the most value out of my marketing budget in order to achieve my goal? That's really simply what we're trying to achieve here, is when we talk about marketing efficiency. It could mean different things to different people. So it's dependent on the strategy. For example, if you're just trying to get the name of your business out there, business awareness, that's one goal. There might be something else where you're actually trying to sell a product. So obviously that's your goal. Or maybe you're just trying to get people to subscribe to your website, for example. So that's another goal. So it's just about basically meeting your goal and what you find important. Okay. So I'm sure there's a lot of you, or probably most of you, are very aware of the marketing funnel. It's something we refer to in marketing quite a lot. And people seem to have this idea or this yeah, this idea that paid search is only really going to help you at the lower funnel area, but that's not really the case. So obviously at the top funnel, just going through it very, just talking about the definitions very quickly. At the top funnel, these are people who, if, for example, we'll go back to the flowers example. You wanting to really get your name out there because you're a florist who wants to get your name out there. This is the area where you would build awareness. So people might not even be looking for flowers, but you're just trying to get your name out there and your brand out there. Your mid funnel will be people who are actually researching. So they're looking for flowers. They haven't chosen a particular provider. So they're out there and they're trying to research on the net, trying to find really good florists, maybe trying to find ones in the area or who deliver on the same day. They're doing research. And lower funnel, people are obviously ready to buy. So for top funnel activity, there's a range of things that you can do. And then normally, although they paid search related, they can be very display focused. So display advertising or doing Gmail advertising, or it could be discovery ads. Discovery ads is kind of a new feature on Google. Again, not touching too much on that, but which allows you to basically, get your product or awareness out there from Gmail to YouTube home to your discovery feed. So it's on quite a wide range of platforms. So we're going to concentrate quite a lot on the mid funnel and the lower funnel and activity that you could really do from a paid search perspective to meet people where they are in the marketing funnel. So let's just go through a couple of features, and I'm just going to use a very, very simple made up example in order to go through one tactic that you could use in order to really achieve marketing efficiency from a retail perspective. So we own this company called Jellyfish Shoes. I know, not very creative, sorry, but we'll just go with Jellyfish Shoes. It's an online retail store, so it means that you're able to buy the shoes directly online. We don't have a brick and mortar store, so we're only available online. We sell both men's and women's sandals and boots. We deliver to major cities in South Africa, so not really into outlying areas, only mainly major cities. And just through my own marketing research and having the business and really understanding who our target market is, we've realized that people between the age of 24 to 45 really resonate with our shoes and love our shoes and buy our shoes. Okay. So what kind of users would we want to engage with at a mid-funnel level? How do we reach customers that are in market for shoes, who are actively researching shoes, but maybe haven't decided on a particular brand? So let's take a look at some of the targeting features that we have available to us in Google Ads, and which ones we can really pick out and choose and really use in order to meet those people where they are in a very efficient way for our budget, and so that we can meet the people that we're really trying to meet. Are there any questions so far? Josh, I don't know if you want to add anything at this point.
No, all good from my side.
Okay, awesome, perfect. Okay, so this is just a range of targeting measures that you can use in Google Ads within paid search. So you can target based on particular keywords. So for example, we were using example of Jellyfish Shoes. I could just target the brand name Jellyfish Shoes, and only people who search for Jellyfish Shoes want to target them with an ad. You can target specific locations. You can actually also negative out locations, and we'll go into that in a little bit, based on ages, gender. In certain regions, you can even target based on household income and parental status. There's a bit of a limitation here depending what country you're advertising in. Device, so do you only want to target people on mobile, or only people on desktop, or only people on tablets, for example? Do you only is your business only running in a certain time of day? Do you only want your ads to run a certain time of day or day of week? You can use, I want to call them third-party audiences or ready-made audiences, if you will, that Google have already for you, in-market audiences. And also you can target people who've previously visited your site using remarketing, which we'll also go into later. And you can even do customer list marketing, or is where the email address comes in. Right, so let's go back to our example of Jellyfish shoes. So what kind of targeting would we do? So looking at mid-funnel, these are people who are really in the research phase. They are actively looking for shoes. Like I said, they haven't decided on a particular retailer that they're wanting to buy for. And keyword examples that you could use to try and get your name out there. Like, you got to just think, okay, if I was looking for shoes, what would I type in? Would I type things like women's shoes or men's shoes, or sandals for women, sandals for men? Maybe I would type, because I'm based in South Africa, I'm based in Durban, so I might type something like sandals for sale in Durban. So you do quite a wide search. I'm not searching for a particular company. Now, something to mention here is that these sort of terms are generally more expensive the more general your terms are, or generic, because generally if we're looking at an ad auction, and we'll talk about the ad auction later for anyone who's not really familiar with the ad auction, there's usually quite a few people who are bidding on these kind of keywords, and with so many people bidding, that's driving up the cost, and it makes them quite expensive to bid on. So just one click on this particular ad, on your ad for this particular keyword, might be quite expensive. So it's really good at this stage to kind of do an overlay of targeting, where you're not just targeting these keywords and you've got this spray and pray approach. It's good to go, okay, well, in order to save budget and to really get the target market that I'm really trying to reach, not just go with keywords, but overlay with other targeting to just be a bit more efficient. So let's look at some other targeting we could do. Based on the brief about Jellyfish shoes, we only service people or deliver to people in the major city areas. So based on that, I could really hone in my targeting and say, I only want to show ads to people who are based in Johannesburg, Durban, or Cape Town, because they are the major city centers. I mean, you could widen that if you wanted to, but if those are the only cities that you are delivering to, makes sense. We know that people between the age of 25 to 45 are the ones who buy our shoes, so then you could choose to really target those particular ages. And then on top of that, you can even do negative keywords. So this is maybe something that you would do after your campaign for your mid-funnel campaign has run for a little bit of time. But you could go in and look at the kind of search terms that your ads are showing up for. And if you're seeing you're showing against children's shoes, which we know Jellyfish shoes do not sell children's shoes, we could add children as a negative keyword so that we don't show on anything related to children's shoes and waste money there. Maybe you've seen as well that people have been searching for free shoes. Our shoes are not free. We are a business, so you could add free as a negative keyword to this particular campaign to make sure that you're not showing ads to anybody who's looking for free things. Any questions or comments at this point? Cool. Okay, so let's just move on to lower funnel activity. So what kind of users would we want to engage with at this particular time? So these people are ready to buy. They are looking, they have done their research, and they're ready now. So at this point, these are your money makers. So at this point, you could start doing more of a brand campaign. So maybe people have done their research and they remembered, oh, I saw these really cool shoes on Jellyfish Shoes website. I really liked it. Now they've done their research. They've looked at a couple of different brands. Maybe they've looked at Takealot. They've looked at Zando. They've looked at a few, even Amazon. They've gone, great, I'm going with Jellyfish Shoes. Now they search again because they want to find the website again. So it would be a good idea to have a brand campaign where we are targeting keywords like Jellyfish Shoes South Africa, maybe Jellyfish Shoes for sale in South Africa, but anything really related to the brand is where we would go with the lower funnel activity. And then besides our lower funnel activity with brand terms, what's also quite good to do is to do a remarketing campaign. So what exactly is a remarketing campaign? So here's a definition from Google: a way to connect with people who previously interacted with your website or mobile app. It allows you to strategically position your ads in front of these audiences as they browse across the web, thus helping you increase your brand awareness or remind those audiences to make a purchase. So a great example here is someone who has, like I said, been a mid-funnel. They have researched, they've done all sorts of things. They've looked at Zando, Takealot, Jellyfish shoes. They might have looked at a couple of different other retailers. They've visited your website, they haven't purchased, they've left again, and now you're going, okay, I want to re-engage those people. I know that those people are actively looking for shoes. They didn't buy at the time, but they're looking for shoes. So I really want to reenact with them, remind them of my brand, remind them that we sell shoes, and see if we can get them to make a purchase. So what kind of targeting would we do there? Right, so this is where audiences come into play, and they are super powerful and super useful, and I would highly recommend anyone to definitely implement remarketing tactics within their paid search strategy. So what you would do is you could create an audience list in Google Ads, or you could do it via Google Analytics if you have a Google Analytics account, and you would do it using a defined set of rules. So you're basically saying to Google, if anyone meets these criteria, I want them to go into this audience bucket of mine because I'm going to use it later. So we use an example here: users who visit your site, they fit the rules, are added to the audience list, and then you can target this audience list in your remarketing campaign later. So these are people who've clicked through to my site. And I've said, okay, if they've clicked through to my site in the last 30 days, I want them to go into my audience bucket. So this is my one audience bucket. You visited my site in the past 30 days, go in this audience bucket. And then I have another audience bucket of anyone who's visited my site, but they haven't converted. So they haven't bought any shoes. So then when you are targeting these people, the best thing to do would be when you create a remarketing campaign, and these would be the positive audience. So you would put this positive audience as your retargeting focus in your remarketing campaign, say these are the people I'm targeting. However, if anyone fits this bucket, but they haven't bought shoes, I've actually done this wrong. Sorry, I've just realized this now. It should be people who have bought my shoes. So I'm making an audience list of people who have bought my shoes. So if anyone has bought my shoes, I don't want to show them another ad. They bought my shoes. I'm happy with them. So what I want to do is target people who've bought my shoes but haven't actually converted. So that's why, as a negative audience, I'm going to place people in here who have bought my shoes so that I don't show an ad to them. Sorry about the confusion. Okay. So that's
sorry, Laura, as well. I think just one thing to add on the remarketing point is you can start to see how powerful this gets when you can start to put people into specific products which they're interested in, as an example. So rather than actually showing somebody who we know is engaging highly with things like women's shoes, rather than just showing them a really broad message that is effectively we sell shoes, what we're able to then start to do is be a lot more effective in how we can reach and how we can message these people as well. So remarketing, particularly in a retail world, is really, really powerful because we know it's a very competitive space, and there's a lot of people who are competing for the same types of traffic, the same types of words. If there's ways that we can start to be a lot more personalized and start to be a lot more kind of engaging to the consumer, that is going to be a massive win. And we know what these people are interested in because they've been to our site and they've engaged with our product groups. So actually by then utilizing these remarketing audiences, we're able to be a lot more targeted and a lot more refined, as well as being able to bid differently to them and say how much we're willing or not willing to spend on specific audience groups as well.
Any questions at this point?
Nope, that makes sense.
Cool. And just to Josh's point as well, there's lots of different ways to do this, and there's also a lot more tactics that we can use. I mean, this is really quite a simple way to do it, and it's really effective. But yeah, it's good to just play around with different things. It also depends very much on the product that you have, where yeah, you can just branch out and even start looking at remarketing people who maybe engage with your site for a certain amount of time. So if they spend 20 seconds on your site, you're not too interested in those people, but maybe if they've spent a minute on your site, which means they've really looked at everything, and you really want to remarket to those people who've engaged, you're even able to do that.
The other thing, just to add to that point, is they need to be broad enough that we get enough people sitting within an audience group. So there needs to be a minimum of 1,000 people who sit within an audience group for us to be able to use it for remarketing on search, because who wants to basically have their name put in an ad copy, right? So it still needs to be really broad enough that we're able to get over 1,000 people, but also if we can refine it down to either a specific product category, or as Lara's saying, the amount of time they've been on site, or people who have dropped out of the purchasing funnel, they're really high signals that we can use then to bid or change the messaging to specific users further down the line.
Cool. So that's just looking at campaigns and what you can do from a campaign targeting perspective, but there are just a couple signals or factors within paid search that you just need to be aware of if you're not already, that can really help to further provide efficiencies and things to be aware of, just to make sure, yeah, that you're spending money in the right place. So Josh, yeah, over to you for this one.
Cool. Thanks, Lara. Yeah, so there's some real kind of key factors to any search or shopping account really, which are really important. And I would actually say they're probably more important in a retail space, based off the fact that markets are a lot more competitive. We have to start taking into account things like margin and product prices and this kind of stuff in order to make money. Whereas if you look at something which is more like a lead generation, or like more of a service, it's a lot easier to understand how much we can spend on the products which we're selling. Whereas with retail, there's obviously different products at different prices. We need to effectively make the media as efficient as possible. And there's a key way of doing that within paid search, but also from a shopping perspective, the same things really ring true. And basically the way that Google has got so successful is by being as relevant as possible to the consumer. So rather than it being a space where the person who has the most amount of money is always king and always the winner, actually what Google have developed is this idea called quality score, which basically rewards you for being as relevant as possible across a few kind of key points. And there's a great video which we'll send around later here, which really explains it really well and shows how you're rewarded for being really relevant, and ultimately it makes your money go a lot further. But as I said, that also rings true from a shopping point of view, where although there isn't a specific quality score which you can see, which is kind of led towards shopping, there's some key metrics which you can see within Google Ads once you get going, which is really around the benchmark CTR and benchmark CPC within the interface. And essentially what that is telling you is, against the auctions which you're appearing in from your shopping activity, how good a quality and how relevant is what you're doing. So obviously, for example, if you're above the benchmark CTR, we're paying too much to get users in. What does that mean that we can do in terms of being able to lower the cost there, and what are some of the things which we can do? And that's where you can start looking at, okay, are my product descriptions within my feed as relevant as they can be, or is there anything I can do around the description to give more insight and more understanding about what the type of product is, or are there any kind of fields which I'm missing? And these types of things where you can start to really improve and build the relevance which you have. So you can see where it's all focused around how we can make this activity as relevant and as engaging to the consumer as possible. And there's really three key benefits to focusing on quality score. That is obviously, and it's all focused around driving efficiency, right? So if we're making our activity and we're making the clicks that we're driving cheaper, that ultimately means we can get more clicks for the same amount of budget which we were going to spend. And ultimately, if we're being a lot more relevant and we're reaching the right person and they're engaged with what we're doing, that's ultimately going to lead to more conversions and more revenue for that same budget as well. So it is a really, really key important and really key facet in terms of everything that we do from a paid search point of view and a shopping point of view. And this is kind of our Jellyfish take really on the factors of quality score, but there's really three key elements which are pulled out, which is that click-through rate and how that is against both the auction, but also what Google deemed to be an acceptable click-through rate within that market and what is expected to be achieved. So that's based off the historical click-through rates which we see versus how that compares to the other auctions. And then that also is taking into account things like some of the ad extensions which we could use around site links. Site links as an example. Relevancy is around how relevant is your keyword to the search which a user has done, which again, how relevant is that keyword to the ad, and then how relevant is that ad to the landing page. And then landing page factors is really just making sure that your site isn't spammy, it doesn't have a whole bunch of pop-ups, it loads quickly, and it's a really engaging and really kind of useful tool for the user. I think sometimes for me, the things which people forget around digital marketing is how would you engage and how would you view that activity you're doing if you were a consumer and if you weren't kind of the owner or the runner of this media. If you're going through and you think, actually, I'm not sure if I was a consumer, I would click on this ad, then that's where we need to start focusing on how we can kind of improve some of those factors. So we put percentages up there. I think from our point of view, this is what we feel gives the biggest indication and the biggest impact on quality scores. So it's heavily weighted towards click-through rate, and that's primarily because a vote is essentially if you have a click, if you have 4 people on the landscape, is essentially a vote for that brand, right? So there's going to be a lot more emphasis and engagement on that metric, whereas the others are really important. And for us, actually, we feel like the click-through rate is the biggest indication on how we can impact performance and how we can get quality score higher. So we just wanted to pull out an example, and this is UK focused, but it rings true everywhere. That actually you can start to see all of the elements which are highlighted in the boxes. These are all different extensions which we can start to add on to activity, but also key call outs and key elements of the business which will drive really, really positive results. And you can start to see how engaging this is and how much information we can give to the consumer rather than it necessarily just being one line with the brand name. What we're obviously trying to do is, in the same way that you would lay out a storefront, if you see one which is really messy and all the clothes are old and tatty and some of the dummies have no heads and the legs are missing and that kind of stuff, versus one where it's all pristine and everything looks clean cut and really well outlined, and there's some key call outs around sales which are on, for example, within the window, you're more likely to go into that second store. So that's effectively what we're trying to do with all of this activity, is entice a consumer in and actually give them the best type of feeling so that they are moving towards purchasing with us. And there are obviously things which come into that around price, but obviously the first thing we're trying to do from an advertising point of view is make sure that we're being as enticing and engaging as possible to the consumer. And we just wanted to pull out some examples around what good relevancy looks like. You can see here in this example, we have a consumer who's searching for an iPhone 7 case. Actually, if we then present them with a tailored ad copy, which is by iPhone 7 cases, it's not by a Samsung case, it's not by a Nokia case, for example, we're giving them what they're after, and then we're pushing them through to the relevant part of the site. We're not landing them on the home page, we're not landing them on the complaints page, for example. What we're doing is we're taking them to the area which gives them what they're after, because inherently people are very lazy, and actually if we get pushed to the wrong type of place, we're going to give up pretty much straight away. We've all been in that situation where you feel like a site is taking 30 minutes to load, and really it's taken 10 seconds. But actually that's the type of recency which we need now, is that really kind of quick and really easy engagement for us, because that's what we're used to in kind of all of the advertising and the buying activity which we do. So ideally, I think it's all about building this relevance, and it's all about making it as easy for the consumer as possible to go through and make that purchase, rather than making them work for it. I kind of always think that actually we're the person if you're a consumer, you're giving them money, so you're helping them out in a way. So we need to make it as easy for them as possible to do the action which we're after. And from a landing page point of view, there's some really good tools out there which spit out some really good results. This one's actually using a Test My Site insight from Google, and actually it tells you what some of the restrictions and what some of the issues and the areas that you need to focus on, split out in this case from mobile and desktop. But you can start to see it gives you recommendations in terms of how can we optimize the page, and how are there things which we can focus on to start to improve that and start to give us a much faster and a much easier experience for the consumer when they hit the page. And really, I really like this example in terms of what happens from a good quality score. I think there's a couple of things to point out. Firstly, I know I've talked about improving the relevance quite a lot. That's still not necessarily the metric which you want to focus optimizing your activity to. You can have a product or a term which has a 10 out of 10 quality score, but it still isn't driving revenue for the business. There still needs to be a focus on the core metric which you're optimizing to, whether that's a cost per acquisition or return on ad spend. But what it does give us is an indication of how we can improve and how we can drive your cost down. So if you think about getting to a 10 out of 10 quality score, then you can see the savings there, versus if we've got a 3 out of 10 quality score as an example. That's a massive swing in terms of how we can, for exactly the same term and exactly the same consumer, drive massive saving within what we're doing. So I think there's also kind of key buckets in terms of how we should look at the activity, and not every single keyword you have is going to be a 10 out of 10. Really, I think what we're looking at from that 9-10 bracket is more, as Lara was kind of talking about, that's really heavily focused on your branded terms, or if you are or on some of the kind of key core generics. But then really from that 6 to 9 ratio is where we'd see some of that more mid-funnel activity sitting. And then really from a 1 to 4 point of view, that's if you were bidding, say, on your direct competitor, for example, because naturally your click-through rate is going to be a lot lower within that space versus them. But ultimately we're trying to get that quality score as high as possible if there's call for an increase in terms of efficiency. Yeah, and I think actually from this point of view, I think the best thing to do would be send around the video, but you can certainly start to see in this example how just because you're paying the most, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to appear at the highest. And obviously we've kind of rigged this example for you guys, so it's fairly obvious who the winner is going to be. But ultimately there's this ranking which is called ad rank within the Google Ads auction, which is essentially the amount you are willing to pay, which is set by your max bid times by the quality score which you're getting. So obviously that means that if your quality score is a lot lower, for you to appear higher on the landscape, it's not impossible for you to have a 1 out of 10 quality score and be top of the page. But it does mean that you're going to have to pay significantly more when compared to other advertisers. So there needs to be a massive focus on relevancy and engagement. And that ultimately comes from it just being a well set out and well thought out paid search or shopping approach. And then that actually nets out from a CPC point of view. So essentially, the way that the auction works is it's what's called a second price auction. So you will only ever pay slightly more than the ad rank of the person below you, divided by the quality, but divided by your quality score. So you can see in this example, advertiser 2 has an ad rank of 12, but because even though advertiser 1 has a much higher ad rank, we're not paying that full ad rank, because that means you're effectively being penalized for having a really strong quality score. But ultimately, you can start to see how that then backs out to making a lot more efficiency, and you're not kind of paying the maximum amount which you've set, but what you are doing is winning that auction, and then ultimately being able to dictate your cost a lot more effectively than if you were, say, sitting in advertiser in position 3, for example. And one, I think the last call out from us is the importance of mobile. I think from a global point of view, actually, if I look at the UK, we're now seeing around 70% of traffic for some retailers is coming through mobile. And that ultimately means that there needs to be a massive focus on how we can make that environment a really, really good place to be. If you think about how, if you have an iPhone, for example, how the search landscape looks completely different on a mobile device to a desktop. Actually, it means that if we're not on the top of the page on a mobile, a consumer sometimes has to scroll 2 or 3 times to get down to the lower ads, or even to the SEO activity as well. So certainly from a mobile point of view, we need to be as high as possible, and we need to be driving as much relevance and engagement as possible as well. Great.
Yeah, that's it from our side. I don't know if there's any questions, maybe even something that wasn't covered on this presentation that someone has a burning question about that they'd like to chat about.
Yeah, maybe I have a question quick for Laura or Josh. Great content. Thank you very much. Very insightful. In terms of a client approaching you and saying, okay, I have so much ad spend, what do you recommend? Should I focus on more search or shopping? I have products to sell and a combination of services. And how do you advise or guide a client in terms of what sort of budget recommendations you'd make to them? Like based on their objectives, what do they want? How do you base it on your keyword research on their regions as well, the potential target audiences, things like that? How do you just give them like a ballpark figure in terms of how much they should spend to get what they want out of it at the end of the day?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a couple of things there. Unfortunately, there isn't a tool for forecasting for shopping in terms of the reach that you can get from that, obviously, because it's not based as much on bidding on a specific keyword. The thing which we always back out to is utilizing the Google Keyword Planner and taking so there's a couple of ways we can forecast there. Obviously, there is, if they already have an account and they already have activity running, that's a lot easier to give a more accurate forecast. But actually, if, say, this is a brand new brand who aren't doing any digital and they haven't ever run on Google Ads before, utilizing something like the Google Keyword Planner and either adding in their specific URL, which then will spit out a whole bunch of different kind of keyword options, and then utilizing some industry insight around what an average click-through rate and an average conversion rate will be. It allows you to then focus on, this is how much you can spend within this space, and this is the potential impact from there. The thing I always add with these forecasts is that if, say, like I say, if we're starting to look at something like shopping, that really broadens the net, but it gives kind of a baseline in terms of this is a decent amount that you can spend. What you're also able to do is search for a specific product category within there. So if they're selling books, for example, we can just put in the term books and it will give you an idea around what is the total level of engagement with it and the level of search available within that activity. But there always needs to be a kind of I guess a check-in point along the way to say, actually, how are we doing against that forecast? Is there opportunity for us to grow? And once we're running, that gives us a view on using how much of the market are we gaining? Do we need to spend more or less? What's the overall product engagement? But I think for me, the best place to start is always the Google Keyword Planner, just to get an idea in terms of what the what kind of a good baseline is in terms of a total budget. And then ultimately, actually, from a shopping point of view, you can kind of get the feeling that there's a lot of stuff which needs to go on in the background before we can start running that activity. So certainly from our point of view, if we're launching some of these advertisers, while we recommend running both paid search and shopping, there's always a need to get things live yesterday, right? And that's where doing paid search is so much quicker and so much easier to get up and running and get kind of right than it is necessarily to get your shopping ads right straight away. So that would probably always be my first point of call. And then from there, we can start to build out this really kind of engaged and really strong feed, because that will need a lot more time to get set up right. It'll be a very expensive place to play. If you try and go live with a poor feed, you can start spending money quite quickly in the wrong types of areas, given the fact that you aren't able to bid specifically on a term. You're using some of the elements within a feed to match to a user.
Sure, thanks. That makes sense. Great, thank you.
Cool. Anyone else? Any other questions? No?
Okay, I'll ask another one then.
Yeah, go for it.
So Google's adopting the, wanting to move away from exact match types now and go more broad-based stuff. So why would they be doing that? And what's your opinion on that moving forward? Because we spoke about the match types and things and expense and stuff like that. So what do you guys have to say about that?
Asking the hard-hitting questions there, Cole.
Yeah, sorry.
It's a very good question, and I think the best way that you can move to that that kind of approach and looking at a much broader net is by making use of some of the automation which is in there. So utilizing Google Smart Bidding, because that is essentially bidding at a specific auction level. So previously, some of the bid strategies, essentially you broadly bid and you change your bids maybe 2-3 times a day, which means that if the bid strategy sets your bid really high and you're bidding on a broad term and you haven't got the right types of negatives and this type of things in place, you can spend money on really irrelevant activity. In theory, utilizing smart bidding takes that out because it's bidding at a specific auction level. So if the search isn't relevant, your bid should be a lot lower than somebody who is highly engaged, highly relevant, and have all of these different signals. For me, I still think that unless it is a very mature account, that there needs to be a focus on the match types that we can control straight away until you've built up a really strong negative keyword list and you have all of those kind of key features in place. As an example, there is maybe, I would say, less than 5% of the accounts globally which we run have adopted the new kind of broader strategy in full at the moment. That's not to say that we aren't testing it and that we aren't giving it a go, but there still needs to be a focus on relevance and a focus on kind of having your accounts set out in the best way possible before we start to look to broaden that out. Because as I say, you can start being really relevant really quickly, and ultimately the best way to drive results is to be relevant and engaging with your brand. So for me, from a starting point, I think it's better to be in a position where you're able to control that before then you start to focus on some of these kind of broader marketing tactics around utilizing broad match to reach new audiences and that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. No, that makes sense. Thanks. I think it's going to be a slow adoption approach, really.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
still are
Also,
definite.
there's
One
also
thing.
the. Oh,
Oh,
sorry,
carry on.
Laura.
No,
You
go
go.
on, then I'll speak.
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
it's fine.
I was just going to say, something I've definitely noticed. It really depends on the industry or vertical as well. So your approach can't be the same across for all clients, because in some verticals, broad and phrase just works so beautifully. And then in others, it goes rogue. So yeah, again, it's almost like that test, check your results, check your results again. That kind of staggered approach definitely seems to be the best way to do it. But 100%, there's been a huge refinement in the way that broadened phrases have been defined by Google. Just over the last couple of months, I've just seen huge changes in the way how a board would have reacted a couple of months ago to the way that boards are matching now. That has changed quite significantly. So yeah, just my 2 cents on that.
Cool, thank you. Josh, did you want to say something else?
No, I think it's like anything, right? There's always going to be these teething problems with new approaches, and realistically, I do think that is how the industry, or how paid search specifically, is going to go. We've been so used to having all of this control and this relevance, but actually, if you look at something like Facebook advertising, for example, or display marketing, that is audience based, and there's no reason why paid search and shopping won't move that way, and will be audience focused with these broad keyword sets within there. I just think, yeah, exactly, it's going to be something which is a slow burn and a slow adoption, because there is still such an investment and focus on driving kind of performance through paid search. But that being said, if the kind of key player like Google is trying to move everyone that way, eventually that is going to be something which the industry is going to have to adopt. So I think at some point we will be in a situation where we're focused on audience rather than necessarily on keyword. But like you said, I think it's going to be a slow move over and a slow burn.
Okay, cool. Perfect, thank you. One more question? Sorry, I'm the question guy. The links that you had in this document for your page speed insights and things like that, will you be able to share those with us? I have them bookmarked somewhere, but in case anyone else wants them. And also any chance of getting a copy of this presentation or the deck, maybe, to look at some of those cool screenshots?
Yeah, I don't think that'll be an issue. So I think we'll just send it over to our organizers at Google, and then they can distribute it.
Yeah, fantastic, thank you.
Nice. I think that is it, and we are out of time. Yeah. Thanks so much, guys, for joining us. I hope you did get something out of this presentation. Something that you didn't know, or